The billionaire collapsed against the garage door at midnight, mascara streaked down her face, designer heels dangling from one hand. She had $847 million in frozen accounts she couldn't touch. The penthouse she owned, padlocked by a scammer who changed the locks while she was at a board meeting. Her lawyer, her assistant, her so-called friends, all screened her calls. And the only person who answered his door was a grease-stained mechanic with a sleeping kid upstairs and every reason to say no. This is their story. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this reaches. The rain hit Riverside like it had a grudge. Caleb Turner stood under the flickering light of his garage's overhang, watching water sheet off the corrugated roof in thick curtains. It was past 11. His daughter Maya had been asleep for 2 hours. He should have been inside, cracking a beer, maybe scrolling through his phone until his eyes gave up. Instead, he was out here because the damn motion light kept tripping, and he didn't trust coincidence anymore. Not after Jenny. His ex-wife had taught him that much. Trust got you an empty house and a 4-year-old asking why mommy didn't come back. He pulled his jacket tighter. The air smelled like wet asphalt and motor oil, the kind of smell that lived in his skin no matter how many showers he took. Caleb didn't mind. This garage, this life, it wasn't glamorous, but it was his. He'd built it with his hands after everything fell apart, one engine at a time, one invoice at a time, one bedtime story at a time. The motion light flickered again. Caleb stepped into the rain, boots splashing through a puddle that probably had more transmission fluid than water in it. He rounded the corner of the building, expecting a raccoon or maybe some drunk kid taking a shortcut home. What he found was a woman. She was standing under the broken streetlight across from his shop, soaked through, her hair plastered to her face. She wasn't moving, just standing there like she'd forgotten how to do anything else. "Hey," Caleb called out. "You okay?" She didn't answer. He walked closer, water streaming off the brim of his baseball cap. The woman was maybe 30, maybe younger, hard to tell with all the rain. She wore what used to be an expensive-looking coat, now clinging to her like wet newspaper. Her shoes were in her hand. One heel was snapped clean off. "Ma'am?" He kept his distance. You didn't approach strange people at midnight without leaving room to run. "You need help?" She finally looked at him. Her eyes were red, but not from crying, more like she'd run out of tears a long time ago and was just running on fumes now. Her voice cracked. She cleared her throat, tried again. "Is there a motel nearby?" Caleb almost laughed. "Motel? Nearest one's about 15 miles north. And it's a roach trap that charges by the hour." She closed her eyes. Her shoulders sagged. "You got a car?" Caleb asked. "No." "Phone?" "Dead." "Someone you can call?" She opened her eyes again, and something in that look hit him harder than he expected. It wasn't desperation. It was something colder. Resignation. "No," she said quietly. Caleb stood there, rain hammering his back, and felt the exact moment his common sense started losing the argument with his conscience. He didn't know this woman, didn't owe her anything, and bringing a stranger into his house, into Maya's house, was about the dumbest thing he could do. But he thought about his daughter upstairs, safe and warm, and he thought about how different things could have been if someone hadn't helped him when Jenny left. "All right," he said, already regretting it. "Come on." She followed him without a word. Inside, Caleb flipped on the light and kicked off his boots. The garage office was small, a desk buried under invoices, a coffee maker that only worked if you hit it twice, a couch he'd pulled from a curb 3 years ago. It smelled like old coffee and WD-40. The woman stood in the doorway, dripping onto the linoleum. "Wait here," Caleb said. He disappeared into the back and returned with a towel and one of his old flannels. "Bathroom's through there. You can clean up." She took the towel, but didn't move. "You're not going to murder me, are you?" Caleb asked. That got a flicker of something, almost a smile. "No." "Good, because I got a kid upstairs and I'm a pretty light sleeper." She nodded and finally walked toward the bathroom. Caleb waited until he heard the door click shut, then let out a long breath. What the hell was he doing? He pulled out his phone, checked on Maya through the baby monitor app. She was curled up with her stuffed giraffe, dead to the world. He made coffee. It was burnt and bitter, but it was something to do with his hands. When the woman came out, she looked slightly more human. The flannel hung off her frame. Her hair was towel-dried into a dark mess. She'd washed her face, and without all the makeup streaked across it, Caleb could see she was younger than he'd thought. Tired, though. Bone-deep tired. "Coffee?" he offered. "Please." He poured her a cup. She wrapped both hands around it like it was the only warm thing left in the world. They sat in silence for a minute. Rain drummed on the roof. "I'm Caleb," he said finally. "Evelyn." "You from around here, Evelyn?" "No." "Passing through?" Something like that. She wasn't giving him much. Caleb didn't push. People had their reasons. "Look," he said, "I got a couch. It's not comfortable, but it's dry. You can crash here tonight, and in the morning we'll figure out your next move." Evelyn looked at him over the rim of her cup. "Why are you helping me?" Caleb shrugged. "Because someone helped me once." She didn't ask what he meant, just nodded. "Thank you," she said, and there was weight in those two words that told Caleb this woman wasn't used to needing help. He stood up. "I'll grab you a blanket." Well, upstairs Maya was still asleep. Caleb stood in her doorway for a moment, watching her breathe. 4 years old, and she already had Jenny's stubborn chin. He hoped that was all she got from her mother. He pulled an extra blanket from the hall closet and headed back down. Evelyn was standing at the window, looking out at the rain. "Here." He handed her the blanket. "Your daughter?" she asked, not turning around. Caleb stiffened. "How'd you—" "The drawing on your desk, the crayon box in this corner." She glanced back at him. "Don't worry. I'm not a threat." "Didn't say you were." "You're thinking it." She wasn't wrong. Evelyn turned back to the window. "She's lucky to have someone who cares that much." Caleb didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't say anything. "Get some sleep," he said finally. "Door locks from the inside if it makes you feel safer." He left her there and went upstairs, but he didn't sleep much. He kept one ear on the baby monitor and the other on the floor below, waiting for something to go wrong. It didn't. When morning came, he found Evelyn sitting on the couch, blanket folded neatly beside her, staring at the wall. "You sleep?" Caleb asked. "Not really." "Yeah, me neither." He made more coffee. This time it was slightly less burnt. Maya's footsteps thundered down the stairs a few minutes later. She rounded the corner in her pajamas, giraffe tucked under one arm, and stopped dead when she saw Evelyn. "Daddy, who's that?" "This is Evelyn," Caleb said. "She's a friend. She's staying for a little bit." Maya studied Evelyn with the serious intensity only a 4-year-old could manage. "Are you a princess?" Evelyn blinked. "What?" "You look like a princess from my book." A real smile flickered across Evelyn's face. Small, but real. "No, sweetheart, I'm not a princess." "Oh." Maya looked disappointed. Then she brightened. "Do you like dinosaurs?" Yes?" "Good, I have 17. Want to see?" Before Evelyn could answer, Maya grabbed her hand and dragged her toward the stairs. Caleb watched them go, coffee cup halfway to his mouth, completely blindsided. By mid-morning, Evelyn had been given a full tour of Maya's dinosaur collection, her rock collection, and her special stick from the park. She sat on the floor of Maya's room, nodding solemnly as his daughter explained the difference between a triceratops and a styracosaurus. Caleb leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, trying to reconcile the image in front of him with the broken woman who'd shown up last night. "Maya," he said gently, "how about you let Evelyn get some breakfast?" "Okay." Maya hopped up. "I'll make toast." She bolted past him. Caleb heard her running down the stairs, followed by the sound of the toaster lever being slammed down with unnecessary force. Evelyn stood up slowly, brushing off her borrowed flannel. "She's wonderful." "She's a menace," Caleb said, but there was no heat in it. "She reminds me of—" Evelyn stopped, shook her head. "Never mind." Caleb wanted to ask, but the look on her face told him not to. They went downstairs. Maya had indeed made toast. It was burnt on one side and raw on the other, and she was incredibly proud of it. "I made it myself," she announced. "I can see that," Evelyn said seriously. "It's very artisanal." Maya beamed. They ate breakfast. Well, Caleb and Maya ate. Evelyn mostly pushed crumbs around her plate. Afterward, Caleb took Maya to the living room to watch cartoons, then pulled Evelyn aside. "We should probably talk," he said. Evelyn nodded. They stepped out onto the porch. The rain had stopped, leaving everything damp and gray. The air smelled like wet earth. "So," Caleb said, leaning against the railing, "you going to tell me what happened?" Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat, controlled. "I was scammed." Caleb raised an eyebrow. "Scammed how?" "I rented a penthouse downtown, signed a lease, paid first and last month, security deposit, the works. Everything looked legitimate. The landlord had references, documentation, the whole package." She paused. 3 weeks later, I came home from a business trip and found the locks changed. My things were gone, and the man who called himself my landlord stopped answering his phone." Jesus. "I went to the police. They said it's a civil matter. I went to a lawyer. He said it'll take months to resolve, maybe longer. I went to my bank to access emergency funds, and—" Her voice cracked just slightly. "There was a freeze on my accounts. Some paperwork issue tied to the fraud. It'll get sorted out, but not today. Not this week." Caleb stared at her. "So you're telling me you're broke?" "Not broke, locked out." She met his eyes. "There's a difference." "Not from where I'm standing." Evelyn's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. "What about family?" Caleb asked. "Friends?" "Complicated. That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." Caleb scrubbed a hand over his face. This was insane. He should have called someone last night. Cops, social services, someone. Instead, he'd let a stranger sleep in his shop and eat breakfast with his kid. But looking at Evelyn now, standing there in his old flannel with her shoulders squared like she was daring the world to take one more shot at her, he didn't regret it. "All right," he said. "Here's what's going to happen. You can stay here a few days, just until you figure out your next move, but you pull your weight. I got a business to run and a kid to raise, and I don't have time to babysit." "I don't need babysitting." "Good. Then we won't have a problem." Evelyn studied him for a moment, and Caleb got the distinct feeling he was being evaluated. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Already told you." "No, you told me someone helped you once. That's not a reason. That's an excuse." Caleb bristled. "Look, lady, if you don't want my help—" "I do." Her voice was quiet but firm. "I just want to understand why." He thought about it, about Jenny leaving, about the nights he'd spent wondering if he could do this alone, about the neighbor who'd watched Maya when Caleb had to work late, the mechanic who'd taught him the trade when he had nothing, the teacher who'd slipped him a grocery gift card at Christmas and pretended it was a school raffle prize. "Because people shouldn't have to do everything alone," Caleb said finally. "That's why." Something shifted in Evelyn's expression. Not quite gratitude, something deeper. "Okay," she said. "Okay." They stood there for a moment, and Caleb had the strangest feeling that he'd just agreed to something a lot bigger than letting a stranger crash on his couch. The first day was awkward. Evelyn didn't know what to do with herself. She wasn't used to being idle, that much was obvious. She paced. She checked her dead phone compulsively. She stood at the window and stared at nothing. Caleb worked in the garage, trying to focus on the Chevy he'd been rebuilding for the past 2 weeks. He could hear Maya's voice drifting down from upstairs, a one-sided conversation that meant she was playing with her dinosaurs again. Around noon, Evelyn appeared in the garage doorway. "Can I help?" she asked. Caleb looked up from the engine block he was degreasing. "Help how?" "I don't know. Whatever needs doing." He almost said no, but then he looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the same restless energy he'd felt after Jenny left. The need to do something, anything, to prove you still existed. "You know anything about cars?" he asked. "No." "You any good with paperwork?" "Yes." Caleb pointed toward the office. "Invoices are a mess. If you can organize them by date and client, that'd actually help." Evelyn nodded and disappeared into the office. 3 hours later, Caleb walked in to find his desk transformed. Invoices were sorted into labeled folders. Outstanding payments were highlighted. There was even a spreadsheet open on his ancient laptop. "Holy hell," he muttered. Evelyn looked up. "I also found 14 unpaid invoices from the last 6 months. You're owed almost $9,000. Caleb blinked. 9? Are you serious? Very. You need a better billing system. I need clients who actually pay. That too. She stood up, stretching her back. I made a list. The top 3 haven't responded to your emails in months. I'd recommend a phone call. Polite, but firm. Caleb stared at the spreadsheet. He'd been so buried in day-to-day work that he'd let this stuff slide. And now this woman, this stranger, had just handed him a roadmap to fixing it. You didn't have to do this, he said. You didn't have to let me stay. Fair point. Maya ran into the office, breathless. Daddy, I'm hungry. Caleb glanced at the clock. Damn, almost 4. All right, Bug, let's see what we got. Dinner was mac and cheese from a box and baby carrots because Caleb was trying to be a responsible parent. Maya narrated her entire day between bites, including a detailed breakdown of which dinosaur would win in a fight. The T-Rex, obviously, unless the Ankylosaurus used its tail. Evelyn listened. Actually listened, not the polite half-attention most adults gave kids. She asked follow-up questions. She debated the merit of the Velociraptor's strategy. She didn't check her phone once because it was still dead. After dinner, Maya insisted Evelyn read her bedtime story. I don't, Evelyn started. Please? Maya deployed the full power of her puppy dog eyes. Evelyn looked at Caleb. He shrugged. Your funeral, he said. Upstairs, Maya handed Evelyn a book about a dragon who was afraid of the dark. Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed and read, her voice steady and calm. Maya was asleep before the dragon made it to the 3rd page. Caleb stood in the doorway, watching. Evelyn closed the book carefully and stood up, tiptoeing toward the door. She nearly jumped when she saw Caleb. She's out, Evelyn whispered. Yeah, she does that. They went downstairs. Caleb poured 2 glasses of whiskey. Cheap stuff, but it did the job. You're good with her, he said, handing Evelyn a glass. She's easy to be good with. Still, Evelyn took a sip, winced slightly. I had a sister. A long time ago. She stopped. It doesn't matter. Sounds like it does. Evelyn looked at him, and for a second, he saw past all the walls she'd built, saw the grief she carried. She died, Evelyn said quietly. Car accident. I was 17. She was 12. Jesus, I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. But time didn't fix some things. Caleb knew that better than most. They drank in silence for a while. Can I ask you something? Evelyn said. Shoot. Why'd you become a mechanic? Caleb laughed, short and bitter. Wasn't exactly a choice. I was working construction when Maya was born. Good money, but the hours were hell. Then Jenny, my ex, she took off when Maya was 6 months old, just left a note and disappeared. I couldn't do construction and raise a baby, so I took a job at a garage. Turned out I was pretty good at it. Saved up, bought this place 3 years ago. And Jenny, she ever come back? Nope. Last I heard, she was in Arizona with some guy she met online. He drained his glass. Haven't heard from her in 2 years. She signed away her parental rights, so legally, it's just me and Maya now. That must have been hard. It was, still is sometimes, but Maya's worth it. Evelyn nodded slowly. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. Another silence. This one felt different, less heavy. So what about you? Caleb asked. What did you do before all this? Evelyn hesitated. Venture capital. Caleb snorted. Venture capital, like Silicon Valley stuff? Something like that. Huh. And you ended up here. Life's funny that way. Funny's one word for it. Evelyn almost smiled. What's another word? Cruel, random, unfair. He poured himself another drink. But sometimes it surprises you, like tonight. This is not terrible. High praise. It's the whiskey talking. Sure. They sat there, 2 strangers who'd collided by accident, and for the first time since she'd shown up soaking wet at his garage, Evelyn looked almost peaceful. Caleb should have known it wouldn't last. The next morning, everything went to hell. Caleb was under a Honda Civic when he heard the shouting. He rolled out from under the car, wiping grease off his hands, and walked toward the front of the garage. A man stood in the doorway, mid-40s, expensive suit, face red with anger. Behind him, Evelyn stood frozen. "You think you can just disappear?" the man snarled. "You signed a contract, Ms. Hart. You owe me money." Hart. So that was her last name. "I don't owe you anything, Richard," Evelyn said, her voice ice cold. "You forged documents. You stole my belongings. You—" "Prove it." "I will." "Good luck with that." Richard smiled, sharp and cruel. "By the time your lawyers untangle this mess, I'll be long gone, and you'll be exactly where you are now, broke and desperate." Caleb stepped forward. "I think it's time for you to leave." Richard looked at him like he'd just noticed a bug. "And who the hell are you?" "The guy telling you to get off my property. This is between me and Ms. Hart." "Not anymore." Richard's eyes narrowed. "You really want to get involved in this?" Caleb crossed his arms. "Already am." For a moment, Richard looked like he might push it. Then he glanced at Caleb's frame, 6'2", broad shoulders, hands that could bend metal, and thought better of it. "This isn't over," Richard said to Evelyn. "No," she agreed, "it's not." Richard left, but the threat hung in the air long after his car pulled away. Evelyn turned to Caleb. "I'm sorry. I didn't think he'd find me here." "How did he?" "I don't know." Caleb didn't like this. Didn't like the look in that guy's eyes. Didn't like the way Evelyn's hands were shaking even though her voice stayed steady. "Who is he?" Caleb asked. "The man who scammed me. Richard Voss." "And he just showed up?" "He must have been watching me, following me." She looked shaken. "I need to go. I can't bring this to your door. Too late. He already found it." "Caleb, look, you want to fight this guy? Fine. But you're not doing it alone." "Why not?" "Because I've seen guys like him before. They count on people being too scared or too tired to fight back. And you look like you're ready to collapse." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "I can handle this." "Didn't say you couldn't, but you don't have to." She stared at him, and Caleb could see the war happening behind her eyes. Pride versus exhaustion, independence versus desperation. Finally, she nodded. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay." And just like that, Caleb Turner, single dad, small-town mechanic, guy who just wanted a quiet life, found himself in the middle of a fight that wasn't his. But as he watched Evelyn square her shoulders and take a deep breath, he realized something. Maybe it was now. The problem with getting involved in other people's wars was that you never knew how deep the water ran until you were already drowning. Caleb learned that lesson fast. 2 days after Richard Voss showed up at the garage, Caleb's best client, Henderson Auto Body, who sent him overflow work and kept his lights on most months, called to cancel their contract. "Nothing personal, Turner," Bob Henderson said over the phone, his voice tight. "Just going in a different direction." "Bob, we've worked together for 3 years. What direction?" "A different one. That's all I can say." The line went dead. Caleb stared at his phone, that sick feeling spreading through his gut like oil in water. He walked into the office where Evelyn was hunched over his laptop, scrolling through public records. "Henderson just dropped me," he said. She looked up sharply. "What?" "My biggest client. Just called and canceled. No explanation." Evelyn's face went pale. "Richard, you think he—" "I don't think. I know." She turned the laptop toward him. "Look at this." The screen showed a business registry. Richard Voss's name appeared on a dozen LLCs, each one connected to property management companies across 3 states. But it was the list of associated names that made Caleb's blood run cold. Robert Henderson. Owner, Henderson Auto Body. "Son of a bitch," Caleb muttered. "He's connected," Evelyn said. "More than I realized. He didn't just scam me. He's been doing this for years. Different cities, different identities, same pattern. And he's got people protecting him. People like Henderson." "Exactly." Caleb sank into the chair across from her. The garage he'd built from nothing was already on thin margins. Losing Henderson meant losing 30% of his income, maybe more. "I told you this would happen," Evelyn said quietly. "I told you to stay out of it." "Yeah, well, too late now." "It's not. You can still walk away. Tell him I left town. Cut your losses." Caleb looked at her, really looked at her. She'd been staying in his spare room for 3 days now. In that time, she'd organized his entire filing system, identified thousands in unpaid invoices, helped Maya with her homework, and barely slept. She moved through the house like a ghost, always working, always thinking, always carrying the weight of whatever had broken her down to showing up at a stranger's garage in the rain. "I'm not walking away," he said. "Why not?" "Because that's what guys like Voss count on, people being too scared to fight." "This isn't your fight." "You're in my house. That makes it my fight." Evelyn opened her mouth, then closed it. Something flickered in her eyes, surprise maybe, or gratitude. She looked down at her hands. "Thank you," she said, so quietly he almost missed it. "Don't thank me yet. We haven't won anything." "No, but we're going to." The certainty in her voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it made Caleb nervous. That was the voice of someone who'd already decided the ending before the story was finished. And in his experience, those stories never went the way you planned. Maya noticed the change first. She was 4, but she wasn't stupid. Kids never were. "Daddy, why are you sad?" she asked that night at dinner, pushing her chicken nuggets around her plate. "I'm not sad, Bug." "Yes, you are. You got your thinky face." Caleb glanced at Evelyn, who was trying not to smile. "Thinky face?" Evelyn asked. "When he thinks too much, his forehead gets all wrinkly. Like this." Maya scrunched up her face in an exaggerated frown. "I do not look like that." "Yes, you do," Maya and Evelyn said at the same time. Maya giggled. Evelyn actually smiled, a real one this time, not the tight professional mask she usually wore. Caleb shook his head. "Ganging up on me in my own house. Nice." "We're not ganging up," Maya said seriously. "We're just telling the truth." "Uh-huh." After dinner, Maya dragged Evelyn upstairs to show her the fort she'd built out of blankets and couch cushions. Caleb cleaned up the dishes, listening to his daughter's laughter echo down the stairs. It was a good sound. He'd take it. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. "Hello? Mr. Turner?" A woman's voice, professional, clipped. "This is Amanda Chen from First National Bank. I'm calling about your business loan." Caleb's stomach dropped. "What about it?" "We've received some concerning information regarding your business practices. We're going to need to schedule an audit." "An audit? On what grounds?" "I'm not at liberty to discuss the specifics over the phone. You'll receive formal notification within 48 hours. This is bullshit. My business is clean." "I'm sure it is, Mr. Turner. This is just standard procedure." The line went dead. Caleb stood there, dishes forgotten, rage building in his chest like steam in a closed engine. This wasn't random. This was Voss tightening the screws. He went upstairs. Maya was showing Evelyn her secret treasure, a collection of rocks, buttons, and what looked like a dried worm in a Ziploc bag. "Evelyn," Caleb said from the doorway, "can we talk?" She read his face and nodded. "Of course." "Maya, I'll be right back, okay?" "Okay, don't touch Wormy, he's sleeping." They went downstairs. Caleb told her about the call. Evelyn's expression hardened. "He's escalating." "You think?" "I'm serious, Caleb. This is how he operates. He finds pressure points and squeezes until you break." "Well, I'm not breaking." "I know, that's what worries me." "What's that supposed to mean?" Evelyn looked at him, and there was something raw in her eyes. "It means people like Richard don't stop. They just keep coming. And I've already cost you one client. If this keeps going, then it keeps going. I'm not backing down." "You have a daughter." "Yeah. And what kind of father would I be if I taught her to roll over every time some asshole pushed her around?" Evelyn didn't have an answer for that. They stood there in the kitchen, the silence heavy between them. Finally, Evelyn spoke. "I need to show you something." She pulled out her phone, she'd managed to charge it earlier, and opened a folder full of documents, photos of lease agreements, bank statements, text messages. "I've been gathering evidence," she said. "Everything I could find on Richard. The fake leases, the shell companies, the victims. There are at least 11 others that I've found so far. Some of them lost everything." Caleb scrolled through the files. It was damning. "This is enough to bury him." "Maybe. If we can get it in front of the right people." "The cops won't touch it. Civil matter," they said, "and Richard's got connections in the department." Then we go over their heads. FBI, state attorney, someone. I've tried. No one wants to take the case. Not enough evidence, they say. Or it's not their jurisdiction. Or they're too busy with bigger fish. Her voice cracked slightly. I've been fighting this for 2 months, Caleb, alone, and I'm losing. For the first time since she'd shown up, Evelyn looked defeated. Not just tired, defeated. Like she'd finally hit the wall she couldn't climb. Caleb made a decision. Okay, he said, then we do it different. Different how? You said there are other victims, right? Find them, talk to them, get them to go on record. If we can show a pattern, if we can prove this isn't just you, that's harder to ignore. Evelyn's eyes widened slightly. That could work? Yeah? Yeah. She was already thinking. He could see it, her mind racing through possibilities, strategies, angles. If we can organize the victims, coordinate our stories, present a unified case, then they can't dismiss it as a one-off dispute. Exactly. She grabbed a notebook, started writing. I'll need to track them down, reach out, convince them to trust me. A lot of them are scared. Richard threatened some of them. So we show them they don't have to be scared anymore. Evelyn looked up from her notes, and something shifted in her expression. Not hope, exactly, but close. This is going to take time, she said. I got time. And money, travel, legal fees. We'll figure it out. Caleb, she set down the pen. Why are you doing this? He'd asked himself the same question a dozen times in the past 3 days. The smart move would have been to send her on her way that first night. The smart move would be to cut his losses now before Voss destroyed everything he'd built. But Caleb had never been good at smart moves. Because it's the right thing to do, he said simply. Evelyn studied his face like she was trying to find the lie. When she didn't find one, she nodded. Okay then, let's go to war. The first victim they found was a woman named Claire Hendricks. She lived 2 towns over in an apartment that smelled like cat food and regret. She answered the door with a cigarette in one hand and suspicion carved deep into her face. Whatever you're selling, I'm not buying, she said. We're not selling anything, Evelyn said. We're here about Richard Voss. Claire's expression shuddered immediately. Don't know him. Yes, you do. He scammed you out of $12,000 18 months ago. Fake rental property in Portland. I said I don't know him. She started to close the door. Caleb put his hand on it. Ma'am, we're not here to cause trouble. We're trying to build a case against him, but we need your help. Claire looked at Caleb, then at Evelyn. You cops? No. Lawyers? No. Victims. Same as you. Something in Claire's face cracked. Just a little. He got you too? Yeah, Evelyn said. He got me too. Claire was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed and opened the door wider. You might as well come in. The apartment was small and cluttered. 3 cats watched them from various perches. Claire cleared a space on the couch and gestured for them to sit. I can't help you, she said, lighting another cigarette. I tried going after him. Got nowhere. Lost more money on lawyers than I did on the scam. Things are different now, Evelyn said. We have evidence, documentation, other victims willing to testify. Other victims? Claire's eyebrows went up. How many? At least 11, probably more. Claire whistled low. Son of a bitch really got around. That's why we need you. 1 victim is a sob story. 12 victims is a pattern. That's prosecutable. What do you need from me? Your story, documentation if you have it, and your willingness to testify if this goes to court. Claire laughed, bitter and sharp. Testify? You know what happened last time I tried to speak up? My car got keyed. My work got calls saying I was a thief. My landlord suddenly decided my rent was going up $300 a month. She tapped ash into an overflowing tray. Richard Voss doesn't just steal your money. He ruins your life. I know, Evelyn said quietly. Believe me, I know. But if we don't stop him, he's just going to keep doing it. That's not my problem anymore. It is if you let him get away with it. Claire's jaw tightened. Easy for you to say. You don't know what it's like. I showed up at a stranger's garage in the rain with nothing, Evelyn interrupted. No money, no phone, no way home. I slept on a couch because I had nowhere else to go. So yeah, Claire, I know exactly what it's like. The two women stared at each other. Caleb stayed quiet, knowing this wasn't his moment. Finally, Claire crushed out her cigarette. What do you want me to do? Well, they left with Claire's story and a box full of documents, emails, contracts, bank statements. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. In the car, Evelyn was quiet. You okay? Caleb asked. That was harder than I thought it would be. Asking for help usually is. It's not the asking, it's the knowing. She stared out the window. Knowing I'm not the only one. That he did this to 11 other people, maybe more, and they've all been fighting alone. They're not alone anymore. No, but they will be if we lose. Then we don't lose. Evelyn looked at him. You make it sound simple. Didn't say it was simple, just said we don't lose. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. You're either very brave or very stupid. Can't it be both? This time she actually laughed. It was small and tired, but real. They drove back to Riverside in comfortable silence. Maya was at a play date with a neighbor kid, which gave them a few hours to regroup. Back at the house, they spread all the documents across Caleb's kitchen table. Evelyn started building a timeline while Caleb made coffee. Henderson called again, he said, checking his messages. Left a voicemail. What'd he say? Caleb played it on speaker. Turner, it's Bob. Look, I feel like shit about dropping your contract. It wasn't my call, okay? Richard Voss has something on me. Old gambling debts I thought were settled. He said he'd bury me if I kept working with you. I'm sorry. I really am. The message ended. Blackmail, Evelyn said flatly. Add it to the list. At least we know it wasn't personal. Does that make it better? Not really. Evelyn made a note. We need to document this. If Richard's threatening people, that's witness intimidation. Criminal, not civil. Think Henderson will testify? Not unless we give him a reason to believe we can win. They worked through the afternoon, building the case piece by piece. By the time Maya got home, they had a timeline spanning 3 years and 4 states. The pattern was clear. Richard would set up a fake rental, collect deposits from multiple people, then disappear before anyone realized what happened. He used different names, different companies, but the method was always the same. He's made at least $400,000 doing this, Evelyn said, running the numbers. Probably more. And spent exactly 0 days in jail. Not yet. Maya burst into the kitchen, her friend's mom trailing behind her. Daddy, we made slime, and it got in Emma's hair, and her mom was really mad. But it was an accident. I'm sure it was, Caleb said, trying not to laugh at the exasperated look on Emma's mom's face. It's fine, Emma's mom said. Mostly fine. We got most of it out. Thanks for watching her. Anytime. She left, and Caleb heard her muttering something about never again under her breath. Maya spotted the papers spread across the table. What you doing? Work stuff, Caleb said, quickly gathering up the more damning documents. Boring, Maya turned to Evelyn. Will you play dinosaurs with me? Evelyn glanced at Caleb. He shrugged. Sure, Evelyn said, but I get to be the pteranodon. Deal. They disappeared upstairs. Caleb listened to their voices, Maya's excited chatter, Evelyn's patient responses, and felt something tighten in his chest. This was temporary. He knew that. Evelyn would get her life back, move on, return to whatever world she'd come from, and he and Maya would go back to their routine. But watching her fit into their lives like she'd always been there made it hard to remember that. His phone rang. Another unknown number. Yeah? Mr. Turner? A man's voice this time, unfamiliar. My name is David Park. I'm an investigative reporter with the Riverside Tribune. I'd like to talk to you about Richard Voss. Caleb sat up straight. How'd you get my number? I've been following Voss for 6 months. Your name came up in connection with Evelyn Hart. I was hoping we could meet. Why? Because I think you're sitting on the story that finally brings him down. Caleb's mind raced. A reporter could be useful, or it could blow up in their faces. Let me call you back, Caleb said. Mr. Turner. He hung up and went upstairs. Evelyn was on the floor surrounded by plastic dinosaurs, while Maya orchestrated an elaborate battle scene. Evelyn, need to talk. Now. She read his tone and stood up. Maya, keep playing. I'll be right back. Downstairs, Caleb told her about the call. Evelyn's expression went cold. Don't talk to him. Why not? If he's investigating Voss, reporters want a story. They don't care who gets hurt in the process. Or maybe he cares about exposing the truth. You don't know that. And you don't know he's not legit. They stared at each other, tension crackling between them. I've dealt with reporters before, Evelyn said. They'll promise you the world, then twist everything you say to fit their narrative. You've dealt with everything before, Caleb shot back. Doesn't mean you're always right. Evelyn flinched like he'd slapped her. Caleb ran a hand through his hair. Look, I'm sorry, that was... No, you're right. Her voice was tight. I've been burned before, and I'm projecting. But Caleb, if we talk to this reporter and it goes wrong, we lose control of the story. And control is the only advantage we have. Or we get exposure, public pressure, make it harder for Voss to operate in the shadows. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. You really want to do this? I think it's worth the risk. She nodded slowly. Okay, but we do it together, and we don't give him anything we can't afford to lose. Deal. They called David Park back and arranged to meet the next morning. That night, after Maya was asleep, Caleb found Evelyn on the porch, staring out at the dark street. Can't sleep? He asked. Never can anymore. He sat down beside her. The air was cool and still. You ever think about what happens after? Evelyn asked. After what? After we win. If we win, what then? Caleb thought about it. Guess you go back to your life. What life? The one Richard stole, the one I'm not sure I even want anymore? He looked at her. What do you want? Evelyn was quiet for so long he thought she wasn't going to answer. Then, I don't know. I used to know exactly what I wanted. Success, power, recognition. I built a career on knowing what I wanted. She laughed softly. Now I'm sleeping in a spare room in a town I'd never heard of 3 weeks ago, and it's the most stable I've felt in years. That's probably not a great sign. No, probably not. They sat in silence. A car passed on the street, headlights sweeping across them. Can I ask you something? Caleb said. Sure. That first night, why didn't you call someone? Family, friends, anyone? Evelyn's hands tightened on the porch rail. Because everyone I knew was connected to my work. And when Richard froze my accounts, when I couldn't access my money, I realized something. I didn't have people. I had contacts, networking opportunities, strategic relationships. Her voice cracked. I had no one who would help me just because I needed help. That's not true. You had me. She looked at him, and in the dim light from the window, he could see tears on her face. Yeah, she whispered. I had you. Something passed between them in that moment, something neither of them was ready to name. Caleb felt it, though. Felt it settle into his chest like warmth spreading through cold metal. We should get some sleep, he said, standing up. Big day tomorrow. Evelyn nodded and followed him inside. At the top of the stairs, she stopped. Caleb? Yeah? Thank you for everything. Stop thanking me. I mean it. I know, but you don't have to keep saying it. She smiled, sad and grateful and exhausted all at once, and went to her room. Caleb checked on Maya one more time, then lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what the hell he'd gotten himself into and why it felt more right than anything had in years. David Park was younger than Caleb expected. Maybe 28, wearing jeans and a button-down that looked like it hadn't seen an iron in weeks. They met at a coffee shop downtown away from Caleb's garage. Thanks for meeting me, David said, shaking hands. I know this is probably weird. You could say that, Caleb replied. They sat down. Evelyn ordered black coffee and sat with her back to the wall, eyes on the door. Old habits. David pulled out a recorder. Mind if I... Off the record, Evelyn said immediately. For now. Fair enough. He put the recorder away. So, Richard Voss, tell me what you know. They told him. Not everything, Evelyn was careful about that, but enough. The scam, the victims, the pattern of fraud spanning multiple states. David listened, taking notes by hand. When they finished, he sat back. I've been chasing this guy for months, he said. Started with a tip from a victim in Seattle. The more I dug, the more I found. But no one would go on record. They were all too scared. Can you blame them? Evelyn asked. No, which is why this is important. If you're willing to speak publicly, we're not, Evelyn interrupted. Not yet. We need to build the case first, get all the victims coordinated, then we go public. David frowned. If you wait too long, he'll catch wind and disappear. Guys like Voss don't stick around when the heat turns up. Then we move fast. How fast? Give us 2 weeks. We organize the victims, gather the evidence, coordinate testimonies. Then you get the exclusive. David considered this. And if I run the story now? Then you get one victim's testimony and Voss walks, Caleb said. Your choice. David tapped his pen against his notebook. Finally, he nodded. 2 weeks. But I want access. Full cooperation when you're ready. You'll get it, Evelyn promised. They shook on it and left. In the car, Caleb said, You think he'll wait? No idea. But we bought ourselves some time. Let's hope it's enough. It had to be. Because back at the garage, waiting on Caleb's desk, was a letter from the bank. They were calling in his loan early. 30 days to pay in full or face foreclosure. Voss was tightening the noose, and they were running out of time. 30 days wasn't enough time to save a business that had taken 3 years to build, but Caleb didn't have the luxury of complaining about it. He sat at his kitchen table at 2 a.m, running numbers that refused to add up no matter how many times he rearranged them. The loan payoff was $68,000. He had maybe 12 in savings, another 8 in receivables if everyone paid on time, which they wouldn't. That left him $48,000 short, with a month to find it. The math was brutal and simple. He heard footsteps on the stairs and looked up to find Evelyn standing in the doorway, wearing one of his old shirts and looking as exhausted as he felt. Can't sleep either? She asked. Not really. She sat down across from him and glanced at the papers spread across the table. Her expression tightened when she saw the bank letter. I'm sorry, she said. Not your fault. Yes, it is. If I hadn't shown up, then Voss would still be out there scamming people, and I'd still be barely scraping by. Caleb pushed the papers away. At least now I'm broke for a reason. That's not funny. Wasn't trying to be. Evelyn reached across the table and took the bank letter, reading it carefully. When she finished, she set it down and looked at him. I can help, she said. With what? Your accounts are still frozen. Not all of them. I have an emergency fund, offshore. Separate from everything Richard touched. It's not much, but it's something. Caleb shook his head. No. Caleb, I said no. You need that money to get back on your feet. What good is getting back on my feet if you lose everything helping me? I made my choice. So let me make mine. They stared at each other across the table. Stubborn, meeting stubborn. Finally, Caleb sighed. How much we talking about? He asked. Enough to cover the loan, maybe a little more. And what happens when you need it? I'll figure something out. I always do. Caleb wanted to argue, but the truth was he didn't have many options. Pride didn't pay bills, and Maya needed a roof over her head. I'll pay you back, he said. Every cent, with interest. I don't want interest. Too bad. You're getting it. A small smile touched Evelyn's lips. You're impossible. Yeah, well, you're not exactly easy yourself. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Outside, a dog barked somewhere down the street. We're really doing this, aren't we? Evelyn said quietly. Going to war with someone who's already proven he can destroy lives. Little late to back out now. I know, She paused, choosing her words carefully. I haven't had anyone stand with me like this before. Not since my sister died. It's strange. Strange bad or strange good? I'm not sure yet. Caleb understood that. He'd felt the same way since she'd shown up, like his carefully controlled life had been thrown into chaos. But maybe it was the kind of chaos he'd needed without knowing it. You miss her? He asked. Your sister? Evelyn's face went distant. Every day. She was the only person who ever really knew me. Not the version I showed the world, the real me. The one who was scared and unsure and didn't have all the answers. She looked down at her hands. When she died, I think I buried that part of myself with her. Decided it was safer to be the person everyone expected. Strong, successful, untouchable. How'd that work out? I ended up at your garage in the rain, so not great. Caleb almost laughed, but there was too much pain in her voice. For what it's worth, he said, I think the real you is better than the version you were trying to be. Evelyn looked up, surprised. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're smart and determined, and you don't quit even when you probably should. I know Maya thinks you're the coolest person she's ever met, and I know you reorganized my entire filing system in 3 hours, which frankly was terrifying. That got a real laugh out of her. It was a disaster. It worked. Barely. They smiled at each other, and something shifted in the air between them, something warm and complicated and absolutely terrible timing. Caleb cleared his throat. We should probably get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be hell. Aren't they all lately? Fair point. Evelyn stood up but paused at the doorway. Caleb? Yeah? Thank you for trusting me, with the money, I mean. I know it's not easy. Nothing about this is easy, but it's worth it. She nodded and went upstairs, leaving Caleb alone with his thoughts and the uncomfortable realization that somewhere along the way, this had stopped being about helping a stranger and started being about something he wasn't ready to name. The next 2 weeks moved like a freight train with failed brakes. They found 8 more victims willing to talk. Each one had the same story with different details. Richard Voss had taken their money, their security, their trust, and left them with nothing but debt and trauma. Some had lost life savings. Others had been evicted, fired, divorced. One man had attempted suicide. Evelyn documented everything with the precision of someone who'd spent years building cases, only this time it was personal. She barely slept, barely ate. Caleb caught her more than once working at 4 a.m, eyes red and fingers flying across the keyboard. You're going to burn out, he told her. I'll sleep when he's in jail. That's not healthy. Neither is letting him win. Caleb couldn't argue with that. Meanwhile, his garage limped along. He'd paid off the bank loan with Evelyn's money, which had bought him breathing room but hadn't solved the bigger problem. Clients were still dropping him. Word had gotten around that crossing Caleb Turner meant crossing Richard Voss, and most people weren't willing to take that risk. His income had dropped 40% in 2 weeks. Maya noticed. Kids always did. Daddy, why don't people bring their cars anymore? She asked one afternoon while coloring at his desk. Just a slow month bug. But it's been slow for lots of days. Yeah, well, that happens sometimes. She studied him with those big serious eyes that reminded him so much of Jenny, it hurt. Are we going to be okay? Caleb set down his wrench and knelt beside her chair. Yeah, baby, we're going to be okay. I promise. You never break promises. Never have. Not planning to start now. She hugged him, small arms tight around his neck, and Caleb felt the weight of that promise settle onto his shoulders like a physical thing. He'd made a lot of promises in his life, most of them to himself, about being a better father than his own had been, about giving Maya stability and safety. And he'd kept them. But this promise felt different, heavier, because for the first time he wasn't sure he could keep it. That night, David Park called. It's been 2 weeks, the reporter said. I've been patient, but I need to know if this is happening. Caleb looked at Evelyn, who was listening on speaker. She nodded. It's happening, Caleb said. We've got 11 victims ready to go on record. Full documentation, timeline spanning 3 years. When? 3 days. We're filing a complaint with the state attorney general on Monday. You can run the story that morning. I'll need interviews, photos, the whole package. You'll get it. And exclusive access. That was the deal. David was quiet for a moment. This is good work, you two. Really good. Voss won't see it coming. That's the plan. After they hung up, Evelyn slumped back in her chair. We're really doing this. Second thoughts? About 100 of them. But we're out of time to turn back. She was right. They'd crossed the point of no return somewhere around victim number 4. Now, it was just a question of whether they'd built a strong enough case to survive what came next. Friday afternoon, Caleb's phone rang. Unknown number, which usually meant trouble these days. Turner's garage. Mr. Turner. A smooth voice, confident and cold. Richard Voss. I think it's time we talked. Caleb's hand tightened on the phone. Got nothing to say to you. Oh, I think you do. See, I've been watching you, you and Ms. Hart. Very cozy setup you've got there. Get to the point. The point is you're making a mistake. A big one. And I'm giving you a chance to walk away before things get ugly. Things are already ugly. No, Mr. Turner, they're not. But they will be if you keep going down this road. I've looked into you, single father, struggling business, 1 bad month away from losing everything. Richard's voice dropped, dangerous and soft. It would be a shame if something happened to that garage, or if Child Protective Services got an anonymous tip about an unfit parent. Rage flooded Caleb's system like gasoline hitting flame. You stay away from my daughter. Then stay away from my business. Your business is fraud. Prove it. The line went dead. Caleb stood there, phone gripped so tight his knuckles were white, and tried to remember the last time he'd wanted to hit someone this badly. Evelyn appeared in the doorway. What happened? He told her. Her face went pale, then red with fury. He threatened Maya. Yeah, that's it. We're calling the police right now. And tell them what? He didn't make a direct threat, nothing that could be proven. It's all implication and subtext. I don't care. Evelyn, Caleb grabbed her shoulders. Listen to me. We stick to the plan. We file Monday. We go public. We let the system handle this. The system hasn't handled anything so far because we didn't have enough evidence. Now we do. She was shaking, and Caleb realized it wasn't just anger, it was fear. Real, bone-deep fear that he'd seen in her eyes only once before, that first night in the rain. He threatened a child, she whispered. He's threatening your child. I know, and he's going to pay for it, but not like this. Not by us doing something stupid that gets us arrested instead of him. Evelyn closed her eyes and took a shaking breath. When she opened them again, the fear was still there, but it was locked down tight behind steel walls. Okay, she said. We stick to the plan. We stick to the plan. But that night, Caleb made sure all the doors were locked and checked on Maya 3 times before he could sleep. Saturday morning, Maya's teacher called. Mr. Turner? This is Sarah Mitchell. I'm calling because we've had a situation at school. Caleb's stomach dropped. What kind of situation? Someone called the office yesterday claiming to be Maya's aunt. They said there was a family emergency and they needed to pick her up. I don't have a sister. Who was it? We don't know. The front desk asked for ID and the person hung up. Miss Mitchell's voice was careful, professional, but Caleb could hear the concern underneath. I wanted to let you know so you could update her pickup authorization, just to be safe. Yeah, thanks. I'll come by Monday and take care of it. When he hung up, Evelyn was standing there with her arms crossed. He went after Maya, she said flatly. Tried to. They didn't let anyone take her. This time. What about next time? Caleb didn't have an answer for that. Evelyn paced the kitchen, her mind clearly racing. We need to move faster. File the complaint today. Monday's too late. It's Saturday. The state attorney's office is closed. Then we go to the press. We call David Park right now and what? Jump the gun because we're scared? That's exactly what Voss wants. He's trying to make us panic, make us sloppy. He's threatening your daughter. I know. Caleb's voice came out louder than he intended. He took a breath, lowered it. I know. And every instinct I have is screaming to grab Maya and run. But running doesn't stop him. It just means he wins and moves on to the next victim. I don't care about the next victim. I care about Maya. I care about you. The words hung in the air between them, raw and honest and completely unexpected. Evelyn looked like she wanted to take them back. Caleb didn't give her the chance. I care about you too, he said quietly, which is why we're doing this right. We're going to finish what we started, and we're going to make sure Voss can't hurt anyone else. Not you, not me, not Maya, no one. Evelyn's eyes were bright with unshed tears. What if it's not enough? Then at least we tried. She nodded, not trusting her voice. They spent the weekend preparing. Caleb installed extra locks on the doors. Evelyn coordinated with the other victims, making sure everyone was ready to give their statements on Monday. David Park sent over interview questions. Everything was moving, building, converging toward a single point. Sunday night, Caleb couldn't sleep. He got up and found Evelyn in the kitchen again, drinking tea and staring at nothing. Nervous? He asked. Terrified. Yeah, me too. He poured himself a glass of water and sat down across from her. Can I tell you something? Evelyn said. Sure. I've spent my whole life building walls. After my sister died, I decided the only way to survive was to never let anyone close enough to hurt me. I built a career, made money, collected contacts, but I never let anyone in. She looked at him. And then I met you and Maya, and you broke through every wall I'd built like they were made of paper, and it scares the hell out of me. Caleb reached across the table and took her hand. Her fingers were cold. You scare the hell out of me too, he said. I've spent 4 years focused on one thing, keeping Maya safe and happy. I didn't have room for anything else. Didn't want room, and then you showed up and suddenly my life feels bigger and messier and scarier than it's been in years. Is that good or bad? Don't know yet. Ask me when this is over. Evelyn almost smiled. Deal. They sat there holding hands across the kitchen table, two broken people who'd found each other by accident and decided to stand together against the dark. Tomorrow would come. The fight would start, and they'd face it together. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and the smell of rain. Caleb dropped Maya off at school personally, had a long conversation with the principal about security, and added 3 new names to the approved pickup list, all people he'd known for years, not taking chances. Maya hugged him extra tight. You okay, Daddy? Yeah, Bug. Just got some important stuff to handle today. Is Evelyn going to be here when I get home? Caleb thought about that. After today, after everything went public, would Evelyn still be here? Or would she finally go back to her old life? I hope so, he said honestly. At 9 a.m., Evelyn walked into the state attorney general's office in Riverside with 11 victims behind her and 3 banker boxes full of evidence. Caleb stood beside her, probably the only person in the room without a law degree, but he wasn't leaving her side. The assistant attorney general was a woman named Patricia Hernandez, mid-50s, sharp eyes, zero patience for bullshit. Talk, she said. Evelyn talked. She laid out the case piece by piece, methodical and precise. The fake leases, the shell companies, the pattern of fraud. Each victim added their story. The evidence stacked up like bricks building a wall. Patricia listened without interrupting. When Evelyn finished, she sat back and steepled her fingers. This is good work, she said finally. Better than most of the cases that cross my desk. But I need to be straight with you. Building a criminal case takes time. Months, maybe years. We don't have years, Evelyn said. He's threatening people, intimidating witnesses. If we don't move now, if we move now without a solid case, he walks. And then he's untouchable. Patricia looked at each of them in turn. I understand your urgency. I do. But my job is to make sure justice actually happens, not just make you feel better in the short term. So what are you saying? Caleb asked. I'm saying I'll open an investigation, assign a team, start building toward prosecution. But it's going to take time, and you need to be prepared for that. Evelyn's jaw tightened. How much time? 6 months minimum. Maybe more. The room went quiet. 6 months of looking over their shoulders, waiting for Voss to strike again, hoping the system moved fast enough to protect them. In the meantime, Patricia continued, I can issue a restraining order. It won't stop him completely, but it gives you legal recourse if he contacts you directly. He's not going to contact us directly, Evelyn said. He'll use proxies, pressure points. He'll make our lives hell without ever showing his face. Then document everything. Every interaction, every threat, every suspicious incident. Build the evidence trail. Patricia stood up. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear, but it's what I can offer you right now. They left the office with a case number and a restraining order that felt about as useful as a paper shield. Outside, David Park was waiting with a photographer. Well? He asked. They're investigating, Evelyn said. But it's going to take time. Then let's make sure Voss doesn't have time to run. The interview took an hour. David asked hard questions and didn't settle for easy answers. The photographer captured everything, the victims' faces, the stacks of evidence, the exhaustion and determination burning in equal measure. When it was over, David promised the story would run in tomorrow's paper, front page, above the fold. This is going to blow up, he said. Hope you're ready. We're ready, Caleb said, more confidently than he felt. They drove back to Riverside in silence. Evelyn stared out the window, her expression unreadable. You okay? Caleb asked. I thought I'd feel better. We did everything right. Built the case, got the victims, presented the evidence, but it still feels like we're losing. We're not losing. We're just not winning as fast as we wanted. Is there a difference? Yeah, one means we give up. The other means we keep fighting. Evelyn looked at him, and something in her expression cracked. I'm tired, Caleb. I'm so tired of fighting. He reached over and took her hand. I know, but you're not fighting alone anymore. She squeezed his fingers and didn't let go. That night, the story went live on the Tribune's website. By morning, it would be in print. By noon, it would be everywhere. Richard Voss's empire of lies was about to come crashing down. At least, that was the plan. But plans had a way of falling apart when people like Richard Voss were involved. Caleb found that out at 3 in the morning when his phone rang. Turn on the news, David Park said, his voice tight. Caleb stumbled downstairs and flipped on the TV. The local news was running a breaking story. Prominent businessman Richard Voss held a press conference late tonight, denying allegations of fraud and claiming he's the victim of a coordinated smear campaign by disgruntled former tenants. The screen cut to Richard, standing behind a podium, looking calm and professional. These accusations are completely baseless, he said. I've spent 20 years building my business with integrity and transparency. This is clearly an attempt to extort money from me by people who refuse to take responsibility for their own financial failures. Caleb felt sick. He's getting ahead of the story, David said over the phone, controlling the narrative before we even had a chance to define it. What do we do? We stick to the facts. My story runs in 3 hours. It's solid. The evidence speaks for itself. And if people believe him instead? David was quiet for a moment. Then we fight harder. Caleb hung up and found Evelyn standing in the doorway, her face pale. He's not going down without a fight, she said. Neither are we. But watching Richard Voss lie with perfect confidence on national television, Caleb felt the first real flicker of doubt. What if they'd started a war they couldn't win? Tuesday morning, the Riverside Tribune hit newsstands with a story that didn't pull punches. David Park had done his job well. Every detail, every victim, every piece of evidence laid out in black and white. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Social media exploded. Other news outlets picked up the story. Victims from cities they hadn't even known about started coming forward. Richard Voss's carefully constructed empire began to crack. By Wednesday, 3 of his shell companies had their business licenses suspended. By Thursday, the FBI opened a formal investigation. By Friday, his lawyer issued a statement saying Richard Voss would be surrendering himself for questioning. It was working. They were winning. And then Saturday morning, everything fell apart. Caleb woke up to find his garage spray-painted with obscenities. Every window smashed, tools stolen or destroyed, years of work reduced to rubble in a single night. He stood in the wreckage, phone in hand, trying to figure out who to call first. The police? His insurance? Someone? Anyone? Maya appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. Daddy, what happened? He moved quickly, blocking her view. Nothing, Bug. Just an accident. Go back inside. But she'd already seen. Her eyes went wide. Evelyn came running, took one look at the destruction, and went white as paper. He did this, she said. We don't know that. Yes, we do. She was right. They both knew it. This was Richard Voss's answer to their story. This was what happened when you fought back. The police came, took statements, dusted for prints they'd never find. The insurance adjuster promised to process the claim, but it would take weeks, maybe months. Caleb's business, the thing he'd built from nothing, the thing that fed his daughter and kept a roof over their heads, was gone. And he had no idea how to get it back. That night, after Maya was asleep and the police had left and the insurance forms were filed, Caleb sat in his destroyed garage and let himself feel it. The anger, the fear, the crushing weight of failure. Evelyn found him there, sitting on the floor, surrounded by broken tools. She didn't say anything, just sat down beside him and took his hand. They sat in the wreckage together, 2 people who'd fought as hard as they could and still lost everything. But they weren't done. Not yet. Because Monday morning, Richard Voss was scheduled to appear in court for his arraignment, and Caleb and Evelyn were going to be there to watch him finally face justice. Win or lose, they were seeing this through to the end. The courthouse steps were cold under Caleb's boots, and he thought about how many times in the past month he'd stood in places he never expected to be. State Attorney's Office, police station. Now here, watching people in suits file past him like he was invisible. Evelyn stood beside him, wearing clothes she'd borrowed from a friend of a friend. A navy blazer that didn't quite fit and slacks that were an inch too short. She looked tired but determined, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look older than 30. "You ready for this?" Caleb asked. "No, but we're doing it anyway." They walked inside. The lobby smelled like floor polish and stress. People moved with purpose, clutching folders and phones, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. Caleb felt out of place in his only pair of dress pants and a button-down that Maya had spilled orange juice on that morning. He'd scrubbed it out, but the stain was still faintly visible if you knew where to look. The courtroom was smaller than he expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, rows of benches that reminded him of church, except without any promise of redemption. They found seats in the back. Around them, other victims filled in. Claire Hendricks smoking nervously outside until the last possible moment. The man from Portland who'd lost his retirement fund, a young couple who'd been evicted 2 days before their wedding. 11 lives destroyed. 11 people who'd trusted the wrong man. David Park slipped into the seat beside Evelyn. "Big day." "That's one way to put it," she said. "His lawyer's here, Marcus Feldman, top defense attorney in the state. This is going to be a fight. Everything with Richard is a fight." The bailiff called the room to order. Everyone stood as the judge entered, a woman in her 60s with gray hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen every trick in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. "Be seated." They sat. The side door opened and Richard Voss walked in. He looked exactly like he had on television, calm, composed, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Caleb's truck. His lawyer walked beside him, whispering something that made Richard nod. They took their seats at the defense table like this was just another day at the office. Caleb's hands clenched into fists. Evelyn's hand found his, squeezed hard enough to hurt. The prosecutor, a young woman named Amanda Chen, who looked about 12 but spoke with the confidence of someone who'd sent plenty of men to prison, stood and read the charges. Fraud, wire fraud, theft, witness intimidation. The list went on. Richard's lawyer stood when it was his turn. "Your Honor, my client maintains his complete innocence. These charges are based on coordinated false testimony from individuals seeking financial gain. Mr. Voss has been a respected businessman in this community for 20 years. He's not a flight risk, he has deep ties to the area, and he's willing to cooperate fully with the investigation." "The people request remand," Amanda Chen said immediately. "Mr. Voss has multiple passports, access to offshore accounts, and a documented pattern of fleeing jurisdictions when investigations get too close. He's an extreme flight risk." The judge looked at Richard over her glasses. "Mr. Voss, do you have multiple passports?" "I do, Your Honor. For business purposes. I travel frequently to—" "How many?" Richard's lawyer whispered something. Richard's jaw tightened slightly. "4. 4 passports. From different countries." "Yes, Your Honor. All legally obtained through legitimate business." "I've heard enough." The judge made a note. "Bail is set at $5 million. Surrender all passports to the court. GPS monitoring. No contact with any of the alleged victims. Next court date is set for—" "Your Honor," Richard's lawyer interrupted smoothly. $5 million is excessive for— "Mr. Feldman, your client has 4 passports and half a dozen shell companies in countries without extradition treaties. I'm being generous. Bail stands." The gavel came down. Caleb felt something loosen in his chest. Not victory, not yet, but the first real breath he'd taken in weeks. Beside him, Evelyn's eyes were bright with tears she refused to let fall. Richard stood, looking back at the gallery. His eyes found Evelyn's. He smiled. It was a small smile, cold and knowing, and it said very clearly, "This isn't over." Then he was escorted out, and the courtroom began to empty. Outside on the steps, the victims gathered. Someone started crying, someone else laughed, high and slightly hysterical. Claire Hendricks lit a cigarette with shaking hands. "We did it," she said. "We actually did it." "We got him arrested," Evelyn corrected. "That's not the same as winning." "Close enough for now." David Park was doing interviews, his recorder going, capturing reactions. Caleb pulled Evelyn aside. "You okay?" he asked. I don't know, I thought I'd feel different, relieved, maybe, or vindicated. But I just feel, she paused, searching for the word, empty. Yeah, I know what you mean. They'd spent so much energy fighting, building the case, staying one step ahead of Richard's threats. Now that the fight had shifted to lawyers and courtrooms and a system that moved at its own pace, they were left standing in the aftermath with no idea what came next. Caleb's phone buzzed. Maya's school. Mr. Turner? Just wanted to let you know Maya's fine, but there was an incident at recess. Another child said some unkind things about you. Maya got upset and pushed him. She's in the principal's office. Caleb closed his eyes. I'll be right there. He hung up and looked at Evelyn. I gotta go. School called. Is she okay? She pushed a kid. First time she's ever done anything like that. Evelyn's face tightened. Because of what's been happening? Probably. I'm coming with you. You don't have to. I'm coming. They drove to the elementary school in silence. Inside, Maya sat in a plastic chair outside the principal's office, her face red and tear-streaked. When she saw Caleb, she ran to him. I'm sorry, Daddy. I'm sorry. He said you were a bad person and I got mad and I pushed him and… Hey, it's okay. Caleb knelt down, held her. We'll figure it out. The principal was understanding. The other kid had started it with his words. Maya had finished it with her hands. Both kids got warnings. Both parents got calls. It could have been worse. Walking back to the car, Maya was quiet. Too quiet. Bug, talk to me, Caleb said. Are you a bad person? The question hit him like a punch. What? No, why would you think that? Tyler said his dad said you're causing trouble, that you make people lose their jobs, that you're… She struggled with the word. A troublemaker. Caleb stopped walking. Evelyn stopped too, her expression stricken. He knelt down to Maya's level. Listen to me. Sometimes doing the right thing makes people uncomfortable. Sometimes it makes them angry. But that doesn't make it wrong, and it doesn't make me bad. But Tyler's dad Tyler's dad is scared. Scared people say a lot of things that aren't true. Maya thought about this. Like monsters under the bed? Exactly like monsters under the bed. Just because someone says they're there doesn't make them real. She nodded slowly, processing. Then she looked at Evelyn. Are you going to stay? Maya asked. After all the scary stuff is over? Evelyn glanced at Caleb, then back at Maya. I don't know, sweetheart. That's complicated. Complicated how? Grown up complicated. That's a dumb answer. Despite everything, Caleb almost laughed. She's got you there. Evelyn crouched down too. The truth is, I haven't figured out what comes next for me. But I promise I won't just disappear without saying goodbye. Okay? Maya studied her face with that unnerving intensity kids had. Okay, but I think you should stay. Daddy's happier when you're here. Maya, Caleb started. He is. He smiles more, and he doesn't have his thinky face as much. Evelyn looked at Caleb, something vulnerable in her expression. Is that true? We should probably get home, Caleb said, dodging the question entirely. But Maya had already said what needed saying, and they all knew it. That night, after Maya was asleep, Caleb found Evelyn packing. What are you doing? He asked from the doorway. The arraignment's done. The investigation's underway. I can't keep staying here forever. Why not? She looked up from the suitcase she'd borrowed. Because this isn't my life, Caleb. This is yours. You and Maya. You've both been so generous, but I can't keep imposing. Imposing? You reorganized my entire business. You helped build the case that put Voss in cuffs. You've been reading Maya bedtime stories and making her laugh, and… He stopped, took a breath. You're not imposing. You're part of this now. Part of what? I don't know. This. He gestured vaguely. Us. Evelyn set down the shirt she'd been folding. Caleb, I'm a mess. My life is a disaster. I don't even know who I am anymore without my career, my money, all the things that used to define me. Maybe that's a good thing. How is that good? Because maybe those things weren't actually you. Maybe you're better without them. She laughed, but it was broken. I'm homeless, unemployed, fighting a legal battle that could take years. How is any of that better? Caleb crossed the room, took her hands. Because you're real now. You're not hiding behind walls or pretending to be someone you're not. You're just you. And that person is pretty incredible. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. You don't know me. Well, I know enough. I know you're strong and smart, and you don't give up even when you should. I know Maya loves you. I know... He paused, heart hammering. I know I don't want you to leave. Caleb, I'm not asking you to stay forever. I'm not asking for promises or commitments or anything you're not ready to give. I'm just asking you to stay. For now. Until you figure out what comes next. She was crying now, quiet tears streaming down her face. What if I never figure it out? Then we'll figure it out together. For a long moment, they just stood there, hands clasped, the suitcase half packed between them. Finally, Evelyn nodded. Okay. Okay? I'll stay. For now. Caleb pulled her into a hug, and she held on like he was the only solid thing in a world that had spent months trying to shake her loose. Thank you, she whispered. Stop thanking me. Never. They stood like that until Evelyn's tears dried and Caleb's heart rate returned to something close to normal. When they finally pulled apart, Evelyn looked at the half-packed suitcase and laughed, watery and exhausted. Guess I should unpack. Guess so. She started pulling clothes back out. Caleb helped, and they worked in comfortable silence until the suitcase was empty again, and Evelyn's borrowed clothes were back in the dresser. What happens now? Evelyn asked. Now we rebuild. The garage, the business, all of it. With what money? Insurance. Loans. I don't know. We'll figure something out. Evelyn bit her lip. I could help. I still have some of that emergency fund left. You already saved my business once. I'm not taking more of your money. Consider it an investment then. When the garage is profitable again, you pay me back with interest. Evelyn, I'm serious. You helped me when I had nothing. Let me help you now. Caleb wanted to argue, but the truth was, he needed help. The insurance would cover some of the damage, but not all. Not enough to reopen quickly. And every day the garage stayed closed was another day without income. Fine, he said, but we draw up actual paperwork. Make it official. Deal. They shook on it, and Caleb felt something settle into place. This was partnership. Real partnership. Not just charity or temporary help, but building something together. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The next few weeks moved fast. Insurance adjusters came and went. Caleb hired a contractor to repair the damage. Evelyn handled the paperwork with the efficiency of someone who'd spent years managing complex deals. Together, they created a plan to reopen the garage within a month. Meanwhile, the legal case against Richard Voss built momentum. More victims came forward. The FBI uncovered bank records showing a pattern of fraud spanning a decade. Richard's lawyer filed motion after motion, trying to delay, deflect, derail. But the evidence was too strong. The trial date was set for 3 months out. Caleb's garage reopened on a Tuesday morning. No fanfare, no grand reopening, just the lights turning back on and the sign flipping to open. By noon, he had 3 cars waiting. By the end of the week, he had appointments booked out 2 weeks. Word had spread. Not everyone agreed with what Caleb had done. There were still people who thought he'd caused unnecessary trouble, who believed Richard's claims of innocence. But enough people respected someone who'd stood up to a bully that his business not only recovered, but grew. Maya helped paint a new sign. She insisted on adding a rainbow and a dinosaur. Caleb led her. Evelyn watched from the doorway, coffee cup in hand, a small smile on her face. Looks good, she said. Looks ridiculous. Same thing. Caleb stepped back to admire his daughter's artwork. Yeah, I guess it is. Life found a rhythm again. Not the same rhythm as before. Something new. Something that included Evelyn in ways that felt natural and right. She started helping with the business full-time, handling books and client relations and all the things Caleb was terrible at. In return, he taught her about cars, patient and thorough, laughing when she called a carburetor a that round spinny thing. Maya flourished. The whispers at school died down. She made new friends. Her teacher reported she was doing well, happy, adjusted. For the first time in months, things felt stable. And then the trial started. The courtroom was packed on day one. Media, victims, curious onlookers who'd followed the story from the beginning. Caleb and Evelyn sat in the second row, close enough to see Richard's face, but far enough back to avoid the cameras. Richard looked different than he had at the arraignment. Thinner, harder. The easy confidence had been replaced with something colder. Amanda Chen's opening statement was devastating. She laid out the case with precision, each piece of evidence building on the last. Fake leases, forged documents, stolen deposits, a pattern of lies that stretched back years. Richard's lawyer countered with character witnesses, business partners who swore Richard was honest, clients who claimed they'd never had problems. It was all smoke and mirrors, but it was effective smoke and mirrors. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Caleb testified on day 4. He told the story simply, honestly. Evelyn showed up at his garage. Richard showed up threatening her. The campaign of intimidation that followed. "And why didn't you just ask her to leave?" Richard's lawyer asked during cross-examination. "Because she needed help. And in the process of helping her, you lost clients, had your business vandalized, put your daughter at risk. Was it worth it?" Caleb looked at Evelyn, then back at the lawyer. "Yeah, it was." Evelyn testified on day 7. She was calm, collected, devastating. She walked the jury through every detail of the scam, every lie Richard had told, every document he'd forged. She presented evidence with the precision of someone who'd built a career on being thorough. Richard's lawyer tried to shake her, tried to paint her as a vindictive ex-tenant with an axe to grind. "Miss Hart, isn't it true that you're currently living with Mr. Turner?" "Yes." "And you've been staying there for months?" "Yes." "Rent-free?" "I've been contributing to household expenses and helping with his business." "But you're romantically involved, correct?" Amanda Chen stood. "Objection? Relevance?" "Goes to bias, Your Honor." The judge nodded. "I'll allow it." "Answer the question, Ms. Hart." Evelyn looked at Caleb. Their eyes met across the courtroom. "We care about each other," she said carefully. "But that doesn't change the facts of this case. Richard Voss is a criminal. He's stolen from dozens of people, and he needs to be held accountable." No further questions. The trial dragged on. Expert witnesses testified about the shell companies. Forensic accountants tracked the money. Victims told their stories one after another, building an undeniable pattern. Richard never took the stand. His lawyer advised against it. On day 19, closing arguments began. Amanda Chen spoke first. She reminded the jury of the evidence, the victims, the lives destroyed. "Richard Voss is a predator," she said. "He targets vulnerable people, steals their money, and disappears before they can fight back. But this time, his victims fought back. They stood up. They came forward. And now it's your job to hold him accountable." Richard's lawyer gave it everything he had. Reasonable doubt, benefit of the doubt, innocent until proven guilty. It wasn't enough. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the foreman stood and read the verdict. On count 1, fraud in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. Evelyn's hand found Caleb's. On count 2, wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. Claire Hendricks started crying. On count 3, theft by deception, we find the defendant guilty. The list went on. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Every single charge. Richard stood perfectly still, his face a mask. But Caleb saw it. The moment the mask cracked, the moment Richard Voss realized he'd lost. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks out and remanded Richard to custody pending sentencing. No bail this time. As Richard was led away in handcuffs, he looked back one last time. Not at his lawyer, not at the jury, at Evelyn. She stared back, her expression unreadable. Then he was gone. Outside the courthouse, it was chaos, media everywhere, cameras, questions shouted from all directions. David Park wrote the story from the courthouse steps, typing furiously on his laptop. Caleb pulled Evelyn away from the crowd, around the side of the building where they could breathe. "We won," she said, like she didn't quite believe it. "We won. He's going to prison." "Yeah." She turned to look at him, and the tears finally came. Not sad tears, something else. Relief, Vindication, exhaustion, everything she'd been holding back for months. Caleb pulled her into his arms and held her while she cried. "It's over," she whispered against his shoulder. "It's over." But even as he said it, Caleb knew it wasn't really over. Not yet. Because now they had to figure out what came next. The trial had given them purpose, direction, something to fight for together. Now, they just had each other. And Caleb had no idea if that would be enough. 2 weeks later, Richard Voss was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution to his victims. Evelyn sat in the courtroom and watched the man who destroyed her life be led away in chains, and she felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just emptiness. Outside, the victims celebrated. Someone suggested drinks. Claire Hendricks invited everyone to her apartment. Evelyn went home instead. She found Caleb in the garage working on a transmission while Maya colored at his desk. "How'd it go?" he asked, looking up. 12 years, full restitution. "That's good, right?" "Yeah, it's good." But she didn't sound convinced. Caleb wiped his hands on a rag and walked over. "You okay?" "I thought I'd feel different, like this would fix something, but I just feel—" She searched for the word. "Lost." "Lost how?" "I spent months fighting him, building the case, preparing for trial, and now it's done, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do anymore." Caleb understood that feeling better than she knew. After Jenny left, he'd spent months just going through the motions, existing but not really living. It wasn't until he'd built the garage, created something new, that he'd found his footing again. "You figure out what comes next," he said simply. "What if I don't know what that is?" "Then you try things until you find it." Evelyn looked at Maya, happily drawing what appeared to be a dinosaur fighting a robot. "What if what I want isn't practical? What if it doesn't make sense? Since when do you care about practical?" She almost smiled. "Fair point." Maya looked up. "Are you staying for dinner, Evelyn? Daddy's making spaghetti and he always makes too much." Evelyn looked at Caleb. He shrugged. "Kid's got a point. I always make too much." "Then I guess I'm staying." They ate dinner together, spaghetti that was slightly overcooked and garlic bread that was slightly burnt. Maya told stories about her day, acting out entire conversations with her dinosaur toys. Caleb listened with the patience of someone who'd heard these stories 1,000 times and would happily hear them 1,000 more. Evelyn watched them and felt something shift inside her chest, something warm and terrifying and completely unfamiliar. She'd spent her whole adult life building a career, making money, accumulating success, and she'd lost it all in a single day. But sitting here, in this small kitchen with its chipped counters and mismatched chairs, eating mediocre spaghetti with a man who fixed engines and his daughter who loved dinosaurs, this felt more real than anything she'd built before. This felt like home. After dinner, Maya insisted on showing Evelyn her latest school project, a diorama about ocean life featuring plastic fish and way too much blue glitter. "It's beautiful," Evelyn said honestly. "Mrs. Patterson said it was very creative." Maya beamed with pride. "That means good, right?" "That means very good." Caleb appeared in the doorway. "All right, Bug. Bath time." "Do I have to?" "Yes." "But I'm not even dirty." "You have spaghetti sauce in your hair." Maya touched her head, found the sauce, and sighed dramatically. "Fine." She trudged toward the bathroom, muttering about the injustice of baths. Caleb and Evelyn went back downstairs. They settled on the couch with coffee that was better than anything Evelyn had made in her previous life with her espresso machine and imported beans. "She's a good kid," Evelyn said. "She is. Takes after her old man. Modest, too. One of my best qualities." They sat in comfortable silence. Outside, night had fallen. The streetlights cast orange shadows through the windows. "Caleb?" Evelyn said quietly. "Yeah?" "What Maya said earlier, about you being happier when I'm here. Is that true?" He took a long sip of coffee, buying time. "Yeah, it's true." "Why?" "Because you make this place feel less empty. Because Maya lights up when you walk in the room. Because—" He paused, choosing his words. "Because somewhere along the way, you stopped being the stranger who showed up in the rain and became someone I can't imagine not having around." Evelyn's breath caught. "Caleb." I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I know you're still figuring things out. I know this whole situation is complicated. I wanted you to know. She set down her coffee cup and turned to face him. What if I told you I don't want to figure things out somewhere else? What if I told you I want to stay here, in Riverside, with you and Maya? I'd say you're crazy. You could go anywhere, do anything. Why would you want to stay in a nowhere town with a mechanic and his kid? Because nowhere else feels like this. She reached for his hand. Because I've spent my whole life chasing things that didn't matter, and I finally found something that does. Caleb looked at their joined hands, then at her face. You're serious? Completely. Evelyn, I can't give you the life you had before. The money, the status, any of it. I don't want that life. It was hollow. She gestured around the small living room with its worn furniture and Maya's toys scattered everywhere. This is real. This is chaos. I know, but it's the good kind. Caleb pulled her closer, and she went willingly. They sat like that, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. You sure about this? He asked. No, but I'm sure about you. He kissed her then, slow and careful, and full of everything they'd both been too scared to say out loud. When they pulled apart, Evelyn was smiling, really smiling, not the practiced professional smile or the polite stranger smile, the real one. So what happens now? She asked. Now you stay. We rebuild. We figure it out together. That simple? Probably not, but we'll make it work. Evelyn believed him. For the first time in months, maybe years, she believed in something. The restitution money came through 6 weeks later. Evelyn stood in the bank holding a check for $73,000. Everything Richard had stolen from her, plus interest. It should have felt like winning. Instead, it just felt like closing a chapter she'd never wanted to write in the first place. She deposited the check and walked out into the bright afternoon. Riverside looked different now than it had that first night in the rain. The streets felt familiar. She knew which coffee shop made the best breakfast sandwiches, which intersection always had a broken traffic light, which neighbors waved when she walked by. This town had become hers without her noticing. She drove back to the garage and found Caleb under a Ford pickup, his legs sticking out, tools scattered around him like metal confetti. You're going to trip on those wrenches, she said. Hasn't happened yet. Doesn't mean it won't. He rolled out from under the truck, grease smudged across his cheek. How'd it go? Got the money. That's good, right? Evelyn sat down on an overturned bucket. It's weird. I spent months fighting for this. Now that I have it, I don't know what to do with it. Caleb wiped his hands on a rag that was probably dirtier than his hands. What do you want to do with it? I've been thinking about that, about what comes next. And? She took a breath. This was the conversation she'd been rehearsing in her head for days, trying to find the right words. Remember that building downtown, the old studio space that's been empty for 2 years? The one with the busted windows? That's the one. I looked into it. The owner's willing to sell cheap. It needs work, but the bones are solid. Caleb sat up, interested now. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about starting something, a non-profit, a place where people who've been scammed or defrauded can get help. Legal advice, financial counseling, support groups, everything I wish I'd had when Richard destroyed my life. She watched his face, trying to read his reaction. He paused. That's a hell of an idea. You think so? I think it's perfect. You'd be good at that. I don't know anything about running a nonprofit. You didn't know anything about car repair either, and you figured that out. She smiled despite her nervousness. The carburetor is still a round spinny thing to me. Details. He stood up, brushed off his pants. You're serious about this? Staying in Riverside, starting over here? I'm serious. If you still want me to stay. Evelyn. He pulled her up from the bucket, hands on her shoulders. I told you weeks ago I wanted you to stay. That hasn't changed. Even though I'm going to be spending all my time trying to get a nonprofit off the ground? Even though it might fail? Especially though. He kissed her forehead. Besides, Maya would kill me if I let you leave. She's already planning your birthday party, and it's 6 months away. Evelyn laughed, the tension finally breaking. She told me. Apparently it involves 17 dinosaurs and a bouncy castle. Sounds about right. They stood there in the garage, surrounded by the smell of oil and the sound of the radio playing something country and forgettable, and Evelyn felt certain for the first time since her sister died. This was right. This was home. Maya burst through the door, backpack bouncing. "Evelyn! Daddy! Guess what?" "What, Bug?" Caleb asked. "Mrs. Patterson said my ocean diorama was the best in the whole class. She's putting it in the display case." "That's amazing," Evelyn said. Maya beamed, then noticed how close Evelyn and Caleb were standing. Her eyes narrowed in that way kids' eyes did when they were onto something. "Are you guys being mushy?" she asked suspiciously. "No," Caleb said. "Yes," Evelyn said at the same time. Maya considered this. "Okay, but no kissing in front of me. That's gross." "Deal," Evelyn said, trying not to laugh. "Can we have pizza for dinner?" Caleb sighed. "We had pizza twice this week. But I did good on my diorama." "Well, that's extortion." "I don't know what that means, but can we still have pizza?" He looked at Evelyn, who shrugged. "Fine, pizza." Maya whooped and ran upstairs to change out of her school clothes. "You know she's playing you, right?" Evelyn said. "Oh, I know, but she's also right. She did do good on that diorama. Kid put glitter in places glitter should never go." That night over pizza that was too greasy and too perfect, Maya asked the question Evelyn had been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. "Evelyn, are you going to live here forever now?" Caleb froze mid-bite. Evelyn set down her slice. "Would you want me to?" Evelyn asked carefully. Maya thought about it with the seriousness of someone weighing world peace. "Yeah, I think so. You make good pancakes, and you don't mind when I talk about dinosaurs for a really long time. Plus, Daddy smiles more." "Maya," Caleb started. "What? It's true, you do smile more. You didn't smile much before Evelyn came." Evelyn's throat tightened. "Well, I'm planning to stick around for a while. Is that okay with you?" "Yeah," Maya grinned. "Can you share my room? We can have bunk beds." "I think I'll keep the guest room, but thank you." "Okay, but if you change your mind, I got first pick on the top bunk." After dinner, after Maya's bath and bedtime story, and the 17 questions she always asked to delay sleep, Caleb and Evelyn ended up on the porch again. It had become their spot, the place where important conversations happened. "You really buying that building?" Caleb asked. "I put in an offer this afternoon. Should hear back by Friday." "Fast mover." "I've waited long enough," she leaned against the railing. "I'm scared, though. What if I'm terrible at this? What if the nonprofit fails and I lose all the restitution money? Then you fail and you try something else. That's how it works." "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple, but it's not as complicated as you're making it either." He moved closer. "You've already done the hard part. You stood up to someone who tried to destroy you. You built a case that put him in prison. Compared to that, starting a nonprofit is easy." "Nothing about this feels easy." "Good. Easy things aren't usually worth doing." She turned to look at him. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just a guy who's made enough mistakes to know what matters." "And what matters?" "This." He gestured between them. "Maya. Building something that helps people. Not being afraid to try even when you might fail." Evelyn kissed him then, slow and deep and full of promise. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "I love you," she said quietly. "I probably shouldn't. We've only known each other a few months and everything's been chaos and I'm a mess." "I love you too," Caleb interrupted. "And yeah, you're a mess, but you're my mess now." "That's the worst romantic declaration I've ever heard. I'm a mechanic, not a poet." "Lucky for you, I like mechanics." They stayed on the porch until the mosquitoes got bad, then went inside and fell asleep on the couch, watching a movie neither of them paid attention to. The building purchase went through. Evelyn spent the next 3 months transforming the abandoned studio into something functional. Caleb helped when he could, teaching her basic carpentry and laughing when she hit her thumb with a hammer for the 3rd time. "You're supposed to hit the nail," he said. "Thanks, that's very helpful." "Just saying." She threw a paint-covered rag at him. Maya helped too, mostly by painting a mural on one wall that was supposed to be a rainbow, but looked more like a colorful blob. Evelyn loved it anyway. The Riverside Recovery Center opened on a Tuesday in October. No fanfare, no grand opening. Just a sign on the door and Evelyn sitting at a desk, waiting to see if anyone would come. Claire Hendricks was the first through the door. "Heard you were doing this," she said. "Thought I'd volunteer. If you need help." "I need everything. I have no idea what I'm doing." "Good. Me neither. We can figure it out together." 2 other victims from Richard's case showed up that week. Then a woman who'd been scammed by a different person entirely. Then a man who'd lost his savings to a pyramid scheme. Word spread slowly at first, then faster. Within 6 months, the center was helping 15 people a week. Within a year, they'd expanded to include free legal clinics and financial literacy workshops. Evelyn worked 70-hour weeks and loved every exhausting minute of it. One evening, almost 18 months after that first night in the rain, Caleb found her at the center, hunched over paperwork at 9 p.m. "You're going to go blind working in this light," he said. She looked up, startled. "What are you doing here?" "Maya's at a sleepover. Thought I'd kidnap you for dinner. I should finish these grant applications. Evelyn, when's the last time you ate?" She thought about it. "Lunch? What'd you have?" "Coffee." "Coffee's not lunch." "It is if you drink enough of it." He walked over and closed her laptop. "Come on, we're going to Angelo's." "The Italian place?" "The very one." "That's fancy. What's the occasion?" "Do I need an occasion to take my girlfriend to dinner?" She smiled at the word girlfriend. Even after all this time, it still felt new. "No, but you usually have one anyway. Maybe I just want to spend time with you." "That allowed?" "I suppose." Angelo's was busy for a weeknight. They got a table in the corner away from the noise. Caleb ordered wine, which he never did. Evelyn narrowed her eyes. "Okay, what's going on?" "Can a guy order wine?" "Not you. You drink beer, cheap beer." "Maybe I'm expanding my horizons." "Caleb," he sighed. "Fine. There might be something I want to talk about." Her heart started beating faster. "What kind of something?" "The good kind. At least I think it's good. You might think I'm crazy." "You're stalling." "Yeah." He took a breath. "Maya asked me something the other day. She asked why you don't live with us for real. Not in the guest room, but for real, real. Her words, not mine." Evelyn's breath caught. "What did you tell her?" "I told her it was complicated, that grown-ups have to make sure everyone wants the same things before they make big decisions." He reached across the table and took her hand. "But the thing is, I know what I want. I've known for a while now." "Caleb, let me finish, please." He squeezed her fingers. "I want you to move in. Really move in. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fight about who forgot to take out the trash and watch you teach Maya things I never could. I want to build a life with you, a real one. Not temporary, not complicated, just us." Evelyn felt tears starting. "You're asking me to move in?" "I'm asking you to come home. Officially." "What about Maya? Did you ask her if she's okay with this?" Caleb smiled. "I asked her. She said it was about time because you're already here all the time anyway, and at least if you moved in officially, you could help with chores." Evelyn laughed through her tears. "That sounds like her." "So what do you say?" She didn't even have to think about it. "Yes. Obviously, yes." He kissed her right there in the middle of Angelo's while other diners pretended not to watch. When they pulled apart, both of them were grinning like idiots. "Fair warning," Caleb said. "The house is small. The shower has terrible water pressure. Maya will probably try to convince you to get a dog." "Can we get a dog?" "Absolutely not." "We'll see." They stayed at the restaurant until closing, talking about logistics and futures and all the boring, beautiful details of building a life together. When they finally left, walking to the car hand in hand, Evelyn looked up at the stars and thought about how far she'd come. A year and a half ago, she'd been standing in the rain with nothing. No money, no home, no hope. Now she had all of it. Not the same way as before. Better, real. Moving in was chaotic. Evelyn didn't have much. Most of her old possessions were still gone, sold off or stolen by Richard. But the things she'd accumulated over the past year and a half filled boxes that Caleb carried up and down the stairs, complaining good-naturedly about how many books one person could own. "They're not all mine," Evelyn protested. Some are for the center. These are romance novels. For the lending library. You're starting a lending library? Maybe. He kissed the top of her head. You're ridiculous. You love it. Unfortunately, Maya helped organize Evelyn's clothes in the closet they were now sharing, giving running commentary on each item. This is pretty, this is boring, this is too fancy. When would you even wear this? Business meetings, Evelyn said. You don't have business meetings anymore. You have people meetings. Fair point. They donated half of Evelyn's old business clothes to charity, the suits and heels and accessories from a life that didn't fit anymore. That night, the three of them had dinner together at the kitchen table that was now officially Evelyn's table, too. Maya insisted on making spaghetti to celebrate, which meant the kitchen looked like a crime scene afterward, but nobody cared. After Maya went to bed, Caleb and Evelyn cleaned up together, moving around each other with the easy familiarity of people who'd learned each other's rhythms. This is nice, Evelyn said, drying a plate. What is? This. The boring domestic stuff. A year ago, I would have hired someone to do dishes. Now I'm doing them myself, and I'm happy. You need higher standards for happiness. Maybe. Or maybe I finally figured out what actually matters. Caleb wrapped his arms around her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. And what's that? This. Us. Building something real instead of something impressive. They stood like that for a long moment, water running in the sink, the house settling around them. I'm glad you showed up that night, Caleb said quietly. In the rain? Yeah, worst night of your life turned out to be the best night of mine. That's sappy. I'm allowed to be sappy in my own kitchen. Our kitchen? Right, our kitchen. The weeks turned into months. Evelyn's nonprofit grew. Caleb's garage stayed busy. Maya turned 5 and had the dinosaur-themed party of her dreams, complete with a bouncy castle that nearly gave Caleb a heart attack when the wind picked up. Life wasn't perfect. They fought about stupid things like whose turn it was to grocery shop and whether Maya needed another stuffed animal. Evelyn worked too much. Caleb forgot to call when he'd be late. Maya went through a phase where she insisted on wearing her dinosaur costume to school every day, which led to some awkward parent-teacher conferences. But it was real. Messy and imperfect and absolutely real. One Saturday morning in June, almost 2 years after that first night, Evelyn woke up to find Caleb already awake, watching her. That's creepy, she mumbled. You snore. I do not. You absolutely do, like a chainsaw made of kittens. She threw a pillow at him. He caught it. Come on, he said. Get dressed. I want to show you something. What time is it? 6:30. On a Saturday? Are you insane? Possibly. Get dressed anyway. Grumbling, Evelyn pulled on jeans and a sweatshirt. Downstairs, Maya was already up, which was suspicious. That kid never woke up early voluntarily. What's going on? Evelyn asked. It's a surprise, Maya said, bouncing with excitement. I don't like surprises. You'll like this one, Caleb promised. They drove out of town, Maya chattering in the back seat about everything and nothing. 20 minutes later, Caleb pulled off onto a dirt road Evelyn had never noticed before. Where are we going? You'll see. The road wound through trees and ended at a clearing overlooking a lake. The sun was just coming up, turning the water gold and pink. Caleb, this is beautiful, but hold on. He got out of the truck. Maya grabbed Evelyn's hand. Come on! They walked to the edge of the clearing. Down by the water, someone had set up a small table with coffee and pastries. What is all this? Evelyn asked. Caleb turned to face her, and his expression was nervous in a way she'd never seen before. So, he said, I'm not good at speeches, and I'm probably going to mess this up, but I need to say something, and Maya said I should do it here because it's pretty and you like pretty things. I helped pick the spot, Maya interjected. You did great, Bug. Now shush for a minute. Caleb took Evelyn's hands. 2 years ago, you showed up at my garage in the rain. You were a disaster. I was a disaster. Together, we were an even bigger disaster. This is romantic, Evelyn said dryly, but her heart was pounding. I'm getting there. The point is, you changed everything. You made my life bigger, better. You made me remember what it felt like to want something more than just getting through the day. And I know we haven't been together that long in the grand scheme of things. And I know I'm just a mechanic and you're this incredible person who helps people and changes lives. Caleb, but I love you. I love you so much it's stupid. And I want to spend the rest of my life being stupid in love with you. He dropped to one knee. Evelyn's breath stopped. From his pocket, Caleb pulled out a ring. It wasn't fancy, a simple silver band with a small stone that caught the morning light. Evelyn Hart, will you marry me? She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only nod frantically while tears streamed down her face. Is that a yes? Caleb asked, smiling. Yes, you idiot. Yes. He stood up and slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then he kissed her while Maya cheered and the sun rose over the lake, and everything felt exactly right. I can't believe you did this, Evelyn said when she could finally talk. Maya planned most of it. I just drove. I picked the pastries, Maya said proudly. The ones with chocolate. Evelyn pulled Maya into the hug. You're both ridiculous and I love you so much. They stayed by the lake until the coffee got cold and the pastries were gone, and Maya got bored and started collecting rocks. Caleb and Evelyn sat on the tailgate of his truck, her hand in his, the ring catching the light. You know this doesn't fix everything, right? Evelyn said. I'm still a mess. The nonprofit is struggling. I still have nightmares about Richard sometimes. I know. And you still want to marry me? Especially because of all that. I'm not marrying some perfect version of you. I'm marrying the real you, nightmares and struggles and all. She leaned her head on his shoulder. When did you get so smart? I've always been this smart. You just didn't notice because I'm covered in grease most of the time. Fair point. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Maya build what appeared to be a rock castle by the water. So when should we do this? Caleb asked. The wedding thing. I don't know. I've never planned a wedding. Me neither. Well, I did once, but that didn't exactly work out. Thanks for the reminder. Sorry, what I meant was, we can do whatever you want, big, small, whatever. Evelyn thought about it. A year ago, she would have wanted something elaborate, impressive, Instagram-worthy. Now she just wanted real. Small, she said. Just us and the people who matter. Maybe at the center? We could use the main room. You want to get married at your nonprofit? It's where I found myself again. Seems right. Caleb kissed her temple. Then that's what we'll do. They got married 3 months later on a Saturday afternoon in September. The center was decorated with flowers from Claire Hendricks' garden and streamers that Maya had insisted on hanging herself. 20 people showed up, victims from Richard's case who'd become friends, neighbors from the street, Maya's teacher, the contractor who'd helped fix the garage. David Park was there, of course, and wrote about it later in a follow-up piece about how the victims of Richard Voss had built new lives from the wreckage. Evelyn wore a simple white dress she'd found at a thrift store. Caleb wore the same suit he'd worn to court, cleaned and pressed. Maya was the flower girl and took her job so seriously she counted every petal she dropped. The ceremony lasted 15 minutes. No fancy vows, no elaborate decorations. Just two people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances and decided to build something better. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Caleb did, and everyone cheered, and Maya made a gagging noise that made everyone laugh. The reception was cake and coffee and people telling stories. Claire talked about how Evelyn had helped her get back on her feet. The man from Portland talked about how Caleb had fixed his car for free when he couldn't afford it. Maya told everyone about the time Evelyn tried to help change oil and somehow got it in her hair. As the sun set and people started to leave, Caleb found Evelyn standing by the window looking out at the street. "You okay, Mrs. Turner?" She smiled at the name. "Yeah, just thinking." About? About how different things are from 2 years ago. About how I used to measure my life in money and success and things that didn't actually matter. About how I almost missed all of this because I was too busy being someone I thought I was supposed to be. Caleb wrapped his arms around her. "You didn't miss it, though. You're here." "I'm here." Maya ran up, tugging on Evelyn's dress. "Can we go home now? I'm tired." "Yeah, Bug. Let's go home." They drove back through town as evening settled in. The garage was dark, closed for the weekend. The center would open again Monday. Life would continue, messy and imperfect and absolutely worth it. That night, after Maya was asleep and the house was quiet, Caleb and Evelyn sat on the porch one last time. Their spot. where everything important happened. You know what's funny? Evelyn said. What? Richard thought he was destroying my life, taking everything I had, leaving me with nothing. Yeah? He did destroy that life. But he made room for this one, this better one. So in a weird way, I should probably thank him. Don't. He's an asshole and he deserves to rot in prison. Evelyn laughed. Fair enough. They sat under the stars, hands clasped, and thought about the future. Not the distant future, just tomorrow, next week, next month. The small, ordinary moments that made up a life. Caleb thought about teaching Maya to ride a bike without training wheels, about fixing Mrs. Patterson's car again because she'd never learned to change her oil, about growing old with the woman beside him. Evelyn thought about the new support group starting at the center, about maybe adopting a dog even though Caleb said no, about building something that lasted. Neither of them thought about what they'd lost. That was behind them now. Only what they'd found mattered. And sitting there on that porch, in that small town, in that imperfect, beautiful life they'd built together, they'd found everything. The billionaire who'd lost it all had discovered what actually mattered. The single dad who'd been afraid to want more had found someone to want it with. And the little girl who just wanted her father to smile had gained a family. Somewhere in a federal prison, Richard Voss served his time, probably still believing he'd won something. He hadn't, because the only thing he'd accomplished was showing Evelyn Hart who she really was, and who she was turned out to be so much better than who she'd been pretending to be all along. Ready for bed? Caleb asked. Yeah, I'm ready. They went inside, locked the door behind them, and turned off the porch light. Tomorrow would come. There would be work and challenges and ordinary problems, but they'd face it together. And that made all the difference.